Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Grind. It's your host, Mark. So today we're going to bring you a little bit of a different type of episode. You'll remember 2 weeks ago we finished up with Ignacio. We talked about networking and social media, and we're going to introduce you to a new character next week. But today I want to bring you a conversation I had with David Chase. So I would consider David a fellow explorer on a parallel path to the grind. His work covers many of the topics we've covered on the show. I don't want to get too deep into it in the intro because he'll tell his story better than I will. So buckle up. Without further ado, here is my conversation with David Chase. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Mark.
All right, man. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to start by reading a LinkedIn post that you made about 3 weeks ago. And this is how I discovered you, and probably a number of people did. So I just want to give the listeners a bit of context. So the post starts, "Last night I was laid off. If I can ask anything of you, it's that you keep reading. I had just started 4 months ago. Now I was told they were letting me and 6 others go, nearly 1/5 of the company. I asked my boss if I could have done anything else. He said to the contrary, I had done more than anyone had ever expected. I asked the CEO why he didn't fight harder to keep me when he fought so hard to get me. I could hear him choke up and talk about forces outside of me. I asked the data. Teacher logins were at an all-time high, up 237% in the last 2 months versus 6% the 3 months prior. So I was left to ask myself why." So that drew me in, man. So why don't you get to that moment and just walk us through kind of what happened there?
Yeah, I've been posting on LinkedIn for a little bit. It's a great place to kind of find your voice and find something that resonates with you and be able to speak your mind. And I was doing that when this happened. I knew I had to make a post about it. It fit within kind of who I wanted to be on the platform, which is a voice of authenticity, of reality for what exists in the workplace, like a human side to the workplace. And I knew I had to talk about it. And it was within the first 24 hours that I posted that, and I wrote it. And I wrote about how I wanted to inspire dialogue and conversation, and because that was something I had wanted to do for a long time. So I used it as a catalyst to do that. And I think at that point, when I hit post, I was just thinking maybe this resonates with some people out there, and it can help other people who maybe are in a similar position.
It's so interesting, man, because I think it would be the last thing like a lot of people would think to do. And I know you said there's some backstory here and some context, but, why share this publicly, rather than sharing with maybe just friends and family, or even just frankly keeping it to yourself?
Yeah. I think that's definitely, you even get some comments like that. And I think that that's a totally fair reaction. If you want to keep things private, I wouldn't say I was even that public of a person that long ago, but one of the things I've realized is over time is just basically that if you believe something, you shouldn't be afraid to say it publicly. In fact, you should be proud to say it publicly. And I believe that a lot of things in the workplace are stigmatized that shouldn't be. And if I'm not going to be an advocate for myself and for others on why those things shouldn't be, then who's going to do it? You can't let other people make those decisions for you if you don't believe they're right. So as I've come to just be more expressive on LinkedIn's platform, I've come to believe that my voice is worthwhile, and frankly, anyone's voice is worthwhile if you believe in something strong enough.
Yeah, so it's interesting, man, and it's like there is this sort of a two-prong effect here. I mean, one is sort of exercising feelings for you, right? And so you get some benefit from putting your words on paper. But then there's other people who may get benefit from hearing your story. Is there one of those that drives you more? And maybe which one drew you to start posting in the first place?
Yeah, they're definitely intertwined, right? It's like a public journal in some ways. And I think one of the things when you post something publicly, you can't just write it once. I edit all my work. I have my 19-year-old brother who's an English major, an incredible writer, better than me, edit my work. Like it forces you to refine your ideas, not just put them down on paper. And so I think that personally is a huge driver for me. Is like it's this paper trail of who I am and what I believed at points in my life. I think the other side of like helping people, I mean, that's the main draw. Otherwise, I probably would just write in a journal. I think that like the expression of my voice can resonate with others, just like other people's voices have resonated with mine. Like reading something that reflects your own reality or reflects a different perspective that can expand your reality. That's why people are on LinkedIn. At least that's why I think people are on LinkedIn outside of trying to get a job. And so
Yeah, that probably is originally why a lot of people are on LinkedIn,
that's why
right?
most people are on LinkedIn. So,
Well,
but
so
yeah.
David, what has the response been like so far to that post, and then maybe your other posts?
Yeah, so I mean that post was definitely the most insane of any post I've posted. It got, nearly 20,000 likes, 4.5 million views, I think, something like that.
Woo! 4.5 million views. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's
That's
wild.
crazy. That's like 1% of the U.S. population, dude. That's nuts.
Yeah, and it's a truly like international experience, which is awesome. And I think to me the most important part was the thousand. There's over 2,000 comments, which I think to me is the coolest part. Like likes are cool, views are cool, but the fact that people were sharing their stories and engaging, like that was special. I got hundreds of messages as well, like hundreds and hundreds of messages and connections, thousands of connections. So just to see how that resonated with people, and just to even hear other people say it was inspiring, like I felt really inspired afterwards by
Yeah.
everyone's
Well,
story.
what kind of comments did you receive back, or what kind of comments are people sharing here? Are they telling their own stories? Are they just saying thanks for sharing? I mean, what's it like?
Yeah, so I think there was sort of like a three-pronged mix. There was people who were sharing their stories, people who were giving advice, and then there were people who wanted to participate in this uh, 30 real questions movement that I was trying to start via that post. So those were
Yeah, and
the
I'm gonna and let's get to that one in a second. But I just curious, as you reflect back, I mean, why do you think people were so drawn to the post?
Yeah, I think there's two parts. One is the sort of untalked about thing. There was actually like a couple of people who posted about layoffs in the following days after I posted that, and a lot of those went viral as well, or both of those I saw went viral. So I think that like the layoff thing just resonates. No one had really. I think it's just a universal thing that I think I read somewhere that a fifth of people get laid off in the have been laid off in the U.S., and that's a lot of people that are not telling their story and feeling like that's not something they could talk about. So I think that was one, and I think the other thing was sort of the optimism embedded in it, and not everyone saw that, but it was definitely intentional that I had been in this position before, and I didn't plan to be handling that situation the same way I did the first time. I was going to be incredibly positive and optimistic about what my future and the freedom of this experience would give me.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I'll tell you why I was drawn to it. It was the vulnerability. I know you talk about people on LinkedIn to make connections, but for me, it sort of turned what LinkedIn was on its head. I think when I think of what I try to do on LinkedIn, or even what I've advised others to do, it's like frankly to put your very best foot forward. Make yourself look better than you are. And definitely not put any weaknesses on there, right? And so and that in some ways, I mean, as going through this podcast process, I reflect as part of the problem with just job searching in general is we all have this facade and this veneer, and we don't talk about some of the real struggles that we deal with, but to see, I think it was so jarring. I mean, to see this on LinkedIn, like I think if you had posted this on Facebook, it would have been interesting, but it wouldn't have had the same effect. There was something about just like this post amongst a sea of other posts about, hey, there's this cool article that I read, or hey, this is a picture of me giving a speech at a conference, or hey, I got this new baller job, like it. This is just so refreshing in a lot of ways, right? And I don't know if Yeah, I don't know if that was part of the calculus or if there's something, to that, but just it felt like it really was unique and cut against sort of the grind of what normally goes on in LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, thank you. I agree. I think that LinkedIn kind of has a lot, like one of the brand problems it probably is going to continue to struggle with is that it's tied to your resume. It's basically like a glorified bragging site, your profile. So how do you kind of extract from that? But I think for me, the reality of like showing like vulnerability is actually showing strength, and Brene Brown talks about that, and there's a lot of people who talk about the power of vulnerability, and I think that not enough people are like that. And if we were to share the things that we are going through in the workplace, like a lot more people would feel connected to one another.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, I think a way I've been describing it is it's all of us going through this parallel process alone, and it's just a missed opportunity, right? Because it's one of the most universal things, looking for jobs. Like you said, 1/5 of people being laid off, and there's so many other people who maybe suffer through jobs they don't like or whatnot, and everyone's looked for jobs. It's a very universal thing, and yet it feels so isolating. So, anyways, thank you for the vulnerability. I think your post is inspiring to me. I know it will be inspiring to our listeners. I do want to jump off now and kind of read further down the post. You have this sentence. So starting on Monday, I'm going to post 30 days of 30 real questions, which is a hashtag, that I believe will inspire incredible conversation on this platform. So what is 30 real questions?
Yeah, so 30 real questions was like an idea sitting in the back of my head for months. I had been cultivating it. It had been something I wanted to do on LinkedIn, off LinkedIn, which was really like trying to cultivate the best set of questions I thought that could help you sort of better navigate your career, frankly, more thoughtfully. One of the more basic questions, but isn't basic whatsoever, is what does success mean to you? If you say your success is family, then are you actually spending all your time with family or at work? And then there are a lot of other things that we have been talking about. Um, I actually asked one of the questions. One of my favorite questions was, "What job is undervalued, and what does that say about your values?" And you just got such a variety of responses. And I think really like the whole goal of 30 Real Questions is this mix between personal growth and reflection, because in 6 months I'll send you the responses. And then additionally, there's a lot of value in just learning from the community. There's a lot of people who have totally different perspectives than you that you can learn from. And there has been a really strong community that's jumped on board, which I feel really fortunate about.
So which of these questions have? I mean, you named a few that I think probably resonate to you. Which of them has gotten the most kind of response, I guess, on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so probably the first one, which was just what is the best question you've ever been asked that made you kind of that made you shift your perspective in your career, and I think that everybody's been asked something that kind of jolted them. And I think that it's sort of the perfect impetus. The reason I posted it first is the perfect impetus to show you how powerful um, questioning and reflecting can be. And so I think that one had a few hundred responses, which is pretty amazing, actually, if you think about like a discussion on LinkedIn. The responses are the most fun to read, to really like dive into how people like view success. Like I got somebody who was formerly homeless to define what success was to him, and then like you had a CTO on the other side defining success. And I think that like the contrast of that is just an incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful experience.
Yeah, man. And then so are you posting one of these every day?
No, so initially that was like kind of the idea, and then as I realized like these are too hard of questions to do that. I think there's also like this whole movement of like 30 days of this, 30 days of that. It's just like too much. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let's do like 30 questions over like 90 days.
yeah, so that's basically what it is. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I post, and then I have some other like random posts on the side that are not really tied to the questions that I'll just throw in there. And they're really like I don't even really like to call them posts. I call them writings.
Have you already written these questions, or are you kind of like generating them as you go through the process?
So I've written, I have like way more than 30 questions, but things come to you, and you always have to be open to things that come to you. And so, something like, uh, this question on what your intrinsic motivation was, which was actually question two. I had 30 questions. I had way actually more than 30 questions before I posted number two, and then I came up with this question of motivation. I just felt it was so good that it like kind of surpassed all of them, and like my brain is always on the search for kind of all these questions, and sometimes I find great ones that I just think are maybe a little bit too vulnerable for the platform. But I have another idea for that later.
Cool, cool. I like it. So I mean, what do you? Are you? I mean, do you have to manage these conversations, like, or you just kind of like let it fly and see what happens? Like, are you responding to the comments and questions? You must be getting a ton of like inbounds, like, like people like me emailing you and wanting you to like, talk or something. I mean, is this becoming like almost a little mini job, just responding to all these posts and all this activity?
Yeah, and I've tried to do like a little email automation and just come up with like a newsletter for the people who connected with me, and just kind of showcase a lot of the answers. So like one of the questions was, what would you do if you could to take 10 minutes out of your out of the middle of the day to refresh? It sounds like a really basic question, but to find something that gives you joy for 10 minutes of the day is like pretty powerful if you can access that. And
Yeah.
when you I actually like put together a graph of all those answers, or and put it in the newsletter. So I'm actually doing like email automation. I do think that if you want to foster discussion, you have to discuss and be willing to be part of that. And so yes, like it's a ton of time. I feel like I'm working harder than I ever I ever have actually, which is
I I can believe I can no, I'm with you, man. It is a process. Like I just dip my toe in the water on social media, and it's like this could take 10 hours a day if I wanted to. Like if I wanted to spend this amount of time on this, I could definitely do it. And
yeah.
so I'm sure it's eating up hours.
Yeah, but
Um,
my girlfriend keeps me in check, so
yeah, she's like keep it in perspective, David.
get off your phone.
Yeah. All right, man. So last little thread here. So I'm just still working down your post, this original post. And the last sentence is let's build a hashtag real LinkedIn. What does that mean? What's a real LinkedIn?
Real LinkedIn is really a place of conversation and authenticity. So I think you really hit on this idea of like vulnerability. A real LinkedIn is not scared of of the veneer. Like they're not going to just put up a fake front. Like we're whole people, and as the movement to bring your whole self to work continues to grow, I think that should absolutely mean that we feel comfortable enough to share who we are and how we actually feel, and not be scared to really have these more difficult, more thoughtful, more introspective conversations, because that's how you grow, and that's something that I think the real LinkedIn represents, is this this movement towards like both personal growth from self reflection, but also personal growth through community building and learning from others.
I appreciate what you're doing here, man. I appreciate just the first post and the impetus to, be vulnerable and put out some of the struggles that you're going through. I mean, that I'm finding just through the podcast that we have a lot of, job knowledge and advice and blah, blah, blah. But what's really resonating with people are the real human stories. So kudos to you for making that happen. And then, yeah, we're excited to hear where this all goes. So, we'll check in a couple months maybe and see where you're at.
That'd be awesome, Mark. And last thing for the listeners, I'll say like, this wasn't just a post that got a lot of likes. It also got me a lot of job opportunities, and I think that that's just something to think about as you go through your job search, is to how can I showcase the version of me that is like actually me, and not just a resume and a piece of paper. And there are a lot of people who have done a lot of creative things to showcase who they are, and it seems to be a very like a win-win scenario for you. You get to be creative, and you also get to show who you are. And frankly, like recruiters don't want to look through thousands of resumes. They want to find the unique person who's showcasing who they are. So I just recommend, in whatever way that manifests itself for you, just don't be scared to like really kind of flap your wings and see what you could create when you're showcasing you.
All right, Dave. Well, thank you for your time, man, and best of luck. Talk soon.
All right. Talk soon, Mark. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody, that was my conversation with David. Thank you, David. We also want to thank Trackman Productions and PG Boo as always. Thanks for sticking with us, everybody. We'll be back next week with an entirely new story, an entirely new character to introduce you to. Thank you all. Grind on.